Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die, where my goal is to give you evidence that although our bodies will disappear, we survive physical death. When we aren't afraid of death, we are less afraid of life. From these episodes, I aim for all of us to take more risks in life, go after our dreams, have great relationships, and a lot of joy and fun in the process. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international bestseller, We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And today I am pleased to introduce you to a brand new friend, and I mean brand new because we just met 5 minutes ago. Her name is Ellyn Dye. Ellyn is an author, intuitive coach, metaphysical teacher, and a public speaker. A near-death experience in 1985 expanded her psychic abilities and created a link with some very loving and humorous guardians of humanity and the ancient wisdom. They provided her with a vast array of information about life on Earth and the evolution of mankind. Ellyn publishes a monthly newsletter called Tunnel Vision, and that's available on her website, lionmagic.com, and is the author of a metaphysical fantasy novel for all ages called The Search for the Crystal Key, an adventure about believing in yourself and the power of love. Ellyn is also working on a new book, Creating Heaven on Earth, One Soul at a Time, a how-to manual from the perspective of a near-death experience. Ellyn Dye, welcome to We Don't Die Radio. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much, Sandra, for inviting me. I'm so excited.
You're welcome. And like I said to you a couple minutes ago before we started recording, I feel like I've known you for a while. Your voice is just familiar and loving, and I get the sense you've got a big smile on your face like I do on mine.
I do. You must be psychic.
No, I can hear it. You know you can hear when people are smiling.
I know you can.
And gave me the visual that you've got a kitty sitting on each side of you, um, probably wanting to be pet and loved. And you're in Maryland, you said, and I'm here in Massachusetts. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why, this is a big question, you believe in life after death?
Sure. Well, I believe in life after death for many reasons. Mostly two experiences that I've had in my life that were huge. Starting at a very early age, and I'm a baby boomer, so this was a long time ago, when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And my mother was dying of cancer in the hospital,
Mm,
and I was home, and I was in bed asleep, and I woke up, and she was standing in my room, and she looked just as physical, as real, as solid as anybody else does, but she had this huge glow about her, all around her and coming through her. And she told me that she loved me and that everything would be fine. Now, granted, later I thought, yeah, easy for you to say, you're not here.
right.
But, but she came and she said goodbye, and then she was gone. And I got up out of bed and I walked into the living room where our grandmother was. She was staying with us. And I said, Mommy died. And, my grandmother burst into tears and she said, oh, no, honey, she's very sick, but your dad's down at the hospital. And at that moment, the phone rang, and it was my father calling from the hospital to say that my mother had died.
Wow.
And so it was sort of at that point where I realized there's a lot they're not telling us, that's going on,
Right.
that they're not telling us in Sunday school, and I'm going to find out about it. So that set my feet solidly on the the seeker path for the rest of my life. And, when other girls in high school were sneaking out of the house to go on dates, I was sneaking out of the house to go to seances.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Hey, let me
so,
ask you a question, Ellen. I
mhm.
mean, the only parent I've lost is my dad, and that happened just 4 years ago as an adult. But would you say because you had that vision of your mom that it made it better? I mean, it was probably your first time losing a loved one, but do you think did it give you any peace that you had seen her?
Oh, absolutely, because I totally knew that she wasn't dead. I mean, it's such a paradox, Sandra, because, it's like she's not dead, but the body is dead.
Hmm. Okay.
I didn't have her there to hug or to, feed me or, you know, any of those things, to lean on when things were bad or to celebrate with me when things were good. She wasn't there in the physical, but I knew beyond a doubt that she was there in my room that night,
Oh, that's great.
not in her body.
Yeah.
So I knew. It's like, that's why I said there's stuff they're not teaching me in Sunday school, because
Hmm.
I knew she was alive. And how do at 12 years old, you really don't have any kind of a model or a context for saying, wait a minute, she's dead, but she's still alive. What does that mean?
Right. Right.
But I knew.
That's
And,
awesome.
and, and of course, after that, I mean, I think this happens to everybody if they're open to it and they watch for the signs. There would be times when I would just know she was there. I could feel her, near me, or just little signs like a smell in the room. I think my mother always wore Chanel number 5,
Oh,
and at certain times, especially I think when I was lonely, or especially during the teenage years when everything is feels like life or death,
yes.
and you're just in so much angst all the time, and I'd be sobbing in my room over some guy or something, or because my father wouldn't let me go out on Friday night, whatever upset me, and suddenly I'd get a whiff of Chanel number 5, and it was like I I had no doubt at all. It wasn't that um I tried to make myself believe it or anything. I was just sure
That's great.
that she was there. So I know it helped. I mean, now, granted, losing a mom when you're 12 is not a fun thing. It's a, horrible, devastating thing. And losing a loved one at any time is.
Right.
But truly knowing that, just that deep knowingness, not just a belief, but a knowingness that she continued, that she was still there, really meant a lot. Now, it got frustrating sometimes because I'd know she was there, and all I really wanted was a big hug, and I couldn't get one
Yes. No, there's nothing like the
physically, but
physical hug. Yeah. I
right.
understand. But it does, I do think your grief can be much, much, much worse if you don't have the faith that um, they're still around. So thank you for that.
Exactly. So the second thing, so
Hmm.
here I'm on this seeking journey through my whole life, reading all the metaphysical stuff and going to the classes and, everything. I really immersed myself in it. Um, in 1985, I was in a really bad head-on collision in a car, and I had a near-death experience.
Wow. Tell us about that.
And that just picked up on, where I left off
With
when I was
mom.
12. So, well, it was an amazing experience, and I was very lucky that I had actually read about them. At that time, there weren't a lot of books out about certainly not about near-death experience. I think Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life,
Yes.
was the only one out, but I had read it. And I had read a lot of Robert Monroe's books about
Yes.
out-of-body experiences, although I'd never had one myself.
Right.
So here I am, I'm driving down the road, and I'm approaching an intersection with a cross street that went kind of at an angle, and there was a traffic light, and another car was coming straight toward me, and at the last minute he decided to turn with no warning or anything, and I had enough time to think, oh my God, I don't think I even got the word turning. I don't know whether I actually got my foot up off the gas pedal or not, because it happened so fast.
Right.
And I did not feel any kind of impact. I just suddenly was looking down at the top of my car from about what seemed about 20 or 30 feet above it. And it took me a second to realize that my viewpoint had altered dramatically.
Sure.
It's like, what am I looking at now? I had a yellow car, so it's like there's this yellow thing there. And, the guy in that other car is walking over to my car, and he reached in, and I thought, isn't that nice? He's checking to see if I'm all right, because at that point I realized that there had been an accident. It turned out he turned off my headlights because he wanted to pretend that I had been negligent and had contributed to the accident.
Oh, so you saw him turn off the headlights.
I saw him turn off my headlights.
Okay.
And so I ended up, getting a ticket for that. And and I thought, okay, I'm going to tell the judge that I saw the guy when I was out of my body, right?
Uh-huh.
Fortunately, I didn't have to do that, but that was an issue later. But at that point, I totally lost interest. And I thought, there should be a tunnel of light around here somewhere. And I heard that it was almost like I heard this big whoosh. And there it was, this big tunnel of light with this. And the thing is, the light was so bright, but not bright enough to hurt your eyes kind of thing, but just really, really bright. But the thing that was the most compelling was that it felt alive, and it felt like the most amazing love you've ever experienced. And it felt like joy. It felt like bliss. And there was no question I was going there, because it just kind of pulsed at me and called me. And
was there any
so
fear, Ellyn, or any
I
concern
had
about
none.
leaving the body or any of that?
I really,
Confusion?
nope. And as I say, I was lucky because I had read about these things, because
Okay.
once I oriented myself and knew I was looking down at my car and realized, wait a minute, if I'm thinking I'm looking down at my car and my body's in the car, then who is I? I am not my body, because my body's in there and I am up here.
Wow.
So I really had no fear at all. I was excited. It's just like I think I didn't really like being in life on Earth anyway. I always found it very hard because I'm an introvert, and so I was happy to go. It was the greatest adventure of my life, and I'd been a seeker all my life, and I was about to get answers.
Oh, that's great.
So I was excited. But the other thing, for anybody who doesn't have that background, I think once you feel that light and that love, any kind of fear that you would have would just evaporate. Because you just know. I mean, nothing can feel that much like love and be bad.
Yeah, and they say you can't feel love and you can't feel fear at the same exact time. So that's,
I think that's true. And this is unconditional love. This is such all embracing love that we've never felt on this planet before. We don't
wow.
we don't have it here. And part of it also is that I felt like I was going home because I felt like that's what I was made of.
Hmm.
So so that's the thing. It's like I went through this tunnel. It wasn't very long, and I came out into more light, and I felt, on one hand, I felt myself that I was so expanded. I was I was such a huge, expansive being. I couldn't imagine how I fit in that body. It would be like kind of shoving an elephant into a Coca-Cola can, you
Right.
know? I mean, it's like it was just too expansive. And
Wow.
at the same time, I felt like I was part of all of this light, and it was part of me, and that I was home, and I was in the raw materials that I was made of. It's kind of, again, it's that paradox of feeling, I was feeling separate and feeling like as an individual still, but also feeling like I was part of everything around me.
I can understand your words. I mean, I can visualize it and see it and kind of try it on, but like I'm not getting it because I haven't been there. But I can only imagine it. It's probably the most magnificent feeling ever.
It really is because, yeah, well, when you get back in a body on Earth, it feels so alien afterwards because you've been where you belong. I mean, there was such a feeling of being home.
Oh, that's
And then I
beautiful.
saw then I saw all of my dead relatives, quote unquote dead, because they weren't dead. They were right there in front of me. And
Say
they pardon?
no, say more about that because there's people I've talked to who've had near-death experiences that didn't see anybody, but they felt like
Mhm.
their loved ones were there. And I sure want to believe that when I go, my dad and my grandmother are going to be right there. So tell us what that was like.
I saw all of them. And it was such joy. It really was. It was like a homecoming. It There was such joy, and by that time I had lost several other relatives, but of course the first one I saw was my mother,
Oh,
and she looked. Now I'm going to cry. She
that's
looked
okay.
she looked younger than I ever knew her.
Wow.
I had I had seen pictures of her young and beautiful, and there she was, and it was so good to see her, and paradox again. It's like, obviously I don't have a physical body there, right? They
Right.
didn't have a physical body, but they appeared to be physical, and I felt physical, and it seemed that I was looking at things through eyes, although I could had a much wider viewpoint. I could see farther in every direction, and it felt like we were hugging, and I could just feel the love from her. And all my other relatives, I mean, we hugged and greeted each other, and four grandparents at that point, and several aunts and uncles. And but the interesting part to me was that there were um, there were relatives that I had never met while I was alive on Earth because they had died before I was born.
Okay.
But I knew who they were because I had seen pictures.
Huh.
But and they knew me. But here's to me the most interesting thing. I was adopted as an infant, and I didn't know anything about my birth family.
Mm-hmm.
And I had birth relatives greet me, as well
Wow.
as relatives from my adoptive family.
Wow.
And somehow I knew who they were too. My birth father had died in 1962, and or 1964. I'm sorry, and he was there, and I knew who he was, and his parents were there, and I knew who they were, and that was. And it was as if I missed them just as much as I had missed the other relatives that I had grown up knowing. It was really fascinating.
Sure.
but the biggest thing was that there was, it was just such a feeling of total love. And with your parents, especially when you're younger, I mean, you have those times when you're bad and they punish you and you're like, I don't like you anymore,
No, right. I know
stuff.
just what you speak of.
But
Yes.
but none of that, and you'd think that, and they had to kind of put on this persona of being, being the stern disciplinarian sometimes or whatever, and all of that was gone. Anything that I might have remembered about, oh yeah, I remember when she used to get really mad when I did that.
Yes.
I mean, none of that was there. None of it was there. The only thing that was there was love and acceptance.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was this sort of thing of, an understanding. I later during my NDE, when I was talking to these beings of light who told me quite a lot about humanity and evolution, and it was a sense of, we had all agreed to play whatever role we had played for each other. And I felt that before I got the ideas of it. I felt that when I was with them, that, oh, didn't we do a wonderful job with each other? Didn't we play out that game well? Didn't we do a good job? That even my mother's death when I was 12 was part of something that we had planned out together.
That sure is good news for those of us who might be having a disagreement with someone, or, we know after death of a loved one so many times there's arguments within families and things like that. Um, yeah, to me that sounds like good news, because I think you might agree that we all have some learning to be done out of each and every situation that happens. And if we all planned on playing them out, it would be learning and growth for each of us, right?
Exactly. And that we had, now, we didn't plan every conversation we're going to have, and we didn't plan every reaction we would have to every situation. But
The big
what I got
stuff.
very clearly, the big stuff. We planned the big stuff, like the loss of a parent.
Right.
And I was fascinated to find out. I mean, this was verified later when I did find my birth family, that my birth father had died in 1964, and I was just so struck that obviously I had planned, I was going to lose a parent at a young age either way. So we have plan A and we have plan B. If my birth mother had decided at the last minute not to arrange an adoption for me, and to get, actually she ended up marrying my birth father, I would have lost a parent
Anyways, yeah.
early on that way.
Sure.
So it really was astonishing to me that it's like, wow, we set up so many of these major things in our lives. And, and then when we're back on Earth, it feels like it is a horrible tragedy when these things happen. But to me, it makes me feel a little bit more, I don't know, in control maybe, that that somehow, other than, oh, there's a divine plan. I mean, there's a divine plan, and then there's actually a plan that we as our expanded soul selves, set up with these other beings in our lives to kind of create a tapestry of our life, or a play, or whatever
Yeah,
analogy you
no,
want to
no,
use.
I get it. What happened next? What are these? Oh,
Well,
well, I won't jump ahead, but I want to hear about the
that,
beings.
at that point, at about that point, when I greeted everybody, and just it was just so nice to um, to to have that love, and it is funny because now, whenever I think of my mother, I think of that, the total unconditional love, acceptance that I felt there, not the
Not the
the
punishment for
time
not
she
cleaning up your
punished
room.
me. And exactly.
Yes.
She was a much kinder, gentler mother in heaven.
That's sweet.
but so about that time, I realized that I really wasn't there to see them, to solely see them.
Right.
I was there to talk to some other people or something, but I wasn't sure what, and I was starting to get a little bit disoriented because all I could see was this unrelenting, gorgeous light. And, we're used to linear time, and we're used to 3D, and we're used to colors and that kind of thing, and landscape, and,
Yeah.
and I thought, I really wish this place looked more like a place. And with that, it's suddenly before my eyes, as if some great artist just sort of like started painting it in front of my eyes. It morphed into this park-like setting, and there was green grass and flowers and trees and birds, and the colors were unbelievable. The colors were alive, and they were vivid, and more vivid and brighter hues than I've ever seen on Earth.
That's
And
amazing. You're the second person who said that. It's just like the colors were alive. And
oh, totally.
the same thing about the vibrancy. And somebody said it was like there's colors that we don't even have here on Earth,
Oh, yes.
which I
And
can't put my head around, but it
I
seems
know,
pretty
because
incredible.
we've never seen them. And I did see animals,
Like pet
um,
animals or animals?
like pet animals,
Yeah.
and let's see what else, and children playing. And to me, people talk about, what do you hear? What's the sound of heaven? And we think, from our training, we think of harp music.
Yes.
To me, the sound of heaven is laughter.
Oh,
And that's what I heard, was laughter, and the squeals of delight that children do when they're playing.
I know that
That
sound.
that kind of laughter, just that total joy, and that's the sound that I equate with heaven, with being home.
Nice.
And so I saw a path, so I followed that, and then I found myself at this at this clearing. And now that I say it, it comes back to me that there was kind of a pavilion with open side, just with columns but no walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself standing there, and I was in a circle of beings of light. There were about 12 of them, and they were very tall. And I'm 5'4", and they were about maybe 10 feet.
Okay. Big.
And but they glowed, of course, and were very, very. They emanated that same love and total acceptance. And that's the thing that is just. It's almost devastating in its purity and its amazing quality, because I felt like I was being seen for exactly who I was, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all the things that anybody had ever judged me for, and all of the additional things that I had judged myself for.
Sure.
And they took it all in, and they loved every bit of it. Every bit
Oh,
of it. There
that's
was like nothing of me that was not completely understood, seen, accepted, embraced, and loved.
that's beautiful.
It was. This is why I have trouble on Earth.
I understand. I'm trying to visualize that experience, and I can't relate it back to anything because I haven't had it. I can
It
only
it
project what I
can't.
think it would be
I
like.
don't. Yeah, I don't think it can be experienced here.
No.
Perhaps parents with babies. I mean, I think babies probably get as close to that complete acceptance and love from their parents as we experience on planet Earth. But it really was this, an amazing thing to have these large glowing beings of light just love me in that way and accept me in that way, which also, of course, inclined me toward, after I came back, toward accepting myself in that way, although that was a little harder.
Sure.
But so we don't have bodies here really, but it appears that we do. We kind of like bodies or whatever people call them, and we didn't have mouths, so we weren't speaking using vocal cords. It was all telepathic, but it seemed like it was conversation.
Okay.
And they told me all about, why we're here, and how man is evolving and what's coming up next, and what we're supposed to get out of life and what we're supposed to put into life on planet Earth. And
Can you give us a few of those answers?
I can.
Because those are like the meaning of life. Oh, they told me.
Yeah.
What would they say, Ellen? What did they say?
Now, the worst part is that most people, a lot of people get told all this stuff, and when we come back to Earth, we forget it.
Right.
Or we forget a lot of it. But the cool part was, and now that we have computers as an analogy, which we didn't have in 1985, it was, a lot of it was sort of like, it felt like whether it was a download of information or whether they just created a file system so that I could access it later. What has happened over time is that kind of like something will trigger the opening of a file in my mind, and I'll go, oh, right, yeah, I remember that. But at the time, I remember them telling me all this stuff, and I kept thinking, oh, I knew that. I remember that. And the point is that we all know all this information. It's inside of us. It's just a question of learning how to access it. We have all the answers. But basically what they told me, and what I remember that they told me so far, is that we're here to love. We are here on planet Earth as an expression of the creative love force in the universe. I don't like to use the word God because everybody's got their own overlay of what that means. To me, it's not a personality. It's a force. It's the creative substance of the universe, and we're all made of it. It is all, that's what we are. That's who we are. This creative love force. And we're all here to express love in the universe and in all different ways, and through whatever plays we happen to create with the other beings around us, to create our individual lives. We're here to express love and to learn to express that.
Wow,
Yeah.
I know we've heard this before, like to love, but it's when we really let it soak in, it's super profound because so many of us are doing a lot of doing and thinking
Oh yeah.
once we get there, we'll have this and we'll feel this way. And it's automatic, I think, no matter how much we know. But
I know.
even just being with a friend for a couple of days, and I was just showering him with love, and things might not have always gone my way, but then but like you just saying that, it's like it really felt good to exercise that love muscle.
Hmm.
Loved it. And so all the other little stupid stuff, because it really was stupid stuff. Like that stuff's not the point. It's how much I expanded my capacity to love.
Right. And
Huh.
I think the element of love that we forget about is the acceptance part.
Say more
We're
about that.
not
What do you mean?
we're not here to be exactly like everybody else.
Thank goodness.
We're here to be different.
Yes.
Each and every one of us. Each of us brings, if you want to say, we each bring a note to the symphony that nobody else can play except us. It is our note. And the symphony isn't complete without all of us. So what do we do as humans? We say, oh, you don't play a note that's like mine. Ew.
Or yours is
We
too high pitched, or yours is too
right.
low, or yours just sounds bad.
Or you play an ugly instrument, or
You're off
whatever.
key.
Right. We
Ah,
find things to dislike and fear about other people who are different.
interesting.
And we separate ourselves and sort of like, well, I play a flute note, so I'm going to stay over here with the other flutes, and you all can just go away. And oh my God, those bassoon people! Oh, you know.
Right.
I mean, we just do that, and I don't know whether it's from training or if it's just sort of what you do when you're a human,
Yeah, I think it's built into our
because we're in this
machinery.
body, right? We're in this body that has to survive, and and fear comes.
Right.
But to me, fear is the absence of love. Everything is love. On the spectrum from the absence of to total complete love. There's this spectrum, and everything that exists in the universe is on that spectrum because there really is only love. Everything is made from this love energy.
Interesting. And great.
And pardon, I know. And the more we can move along that spectrum, from the absence place, from the fear place to the total love place, the better our lives become,
Hmm.
and the more we emanate that higher vibration, because wherever we go, we're emanating whatever vibration we've reached on a spectrum of love. And so that was the biggest thing. That and the fact that, God doesn't judge us. That's a human trait.
Oh, that's fantastic news.
Only humans judge,
Yeah.
and we're great at it. We're really, really good at judging other people and especially judging ourselves. But God doesn't do that. God just loves us.
Ellen, I'm thinking when you're talking about it, I think a lot of us are harder on ourselves than we'd ever be on another human being.
Yes,
And
indeed.
what would it be like to live even one day with no self-judgment, just love and compassion for the person who's in your skin? Like I can't even imagine how great that would be.
I
And
know.
and that is that feeling of love that you got from those beings. How
It
much
is, and
more,
I have tried ever since
yeah, how much more
to
productive we'd be, how much more understanding, and oh wow. So what else happened?
well, so,
Tell us more.
we stood around and talked about the universe. One of the things I really did come away with
That
was
sounds
that
funny.
I know that we are moving toward, the golden age of humanity. And despite what it looks like outside sometimes,
Hmm.
that this really is the great shift. And we all, oddly enough, you know, the highly evolved ones came to the planet right now so that we could all participate in this shift that's happening in
Interesting.
consciousness. And, what we're seeing is a massive shift of taking a giant step forward on that spectrum of love. And we're in the process of doing that because, we've played out the whole duality, hate, fear, and loathing part for a long time, and that was fun. But we're all pretty much ready to move on now
Yes.
and have more peace and love in our lives.
Hmm.
And we really are, despite the headline news. We really are in the process of doing that. So that gave me great hope. And I saw a vision of the golden age of people really living in love for each other and respect for each other and valuing that note that each person plays and working together, collaboration rather than competition, and sharing the abundance of the earth. There's plenty for everybody,
Definitely.
if
Yeah.
if we would share, and so we really are moving in that direction,
Oh.
and so that was really good. I do remember one of the last things was that I feel like I was arguing, but of course they were just saying, you can do whatever you want, dear, and I was saying, I'm not going back there, and you can't make me, because people are mean. And this kind of love doesn't exist there. And now that I'm here, I know I'm home.
Right.
And I don't want to go back, And besides, all of me won't fit into that body. I know that for sure. And I'm staying, and you can't
Uh-huh.
make me leave. And they were going, you are a divine being, and you have uh, free will,
Hmm.
and you can decide what you want to do. And now here's the kicker. They said, but let us remind you why you picked this particular life to have on Earth. And at that point, I woke up in the emergency room and I swore and I said, why am I here? And the nurse came over and she said, you were in a car accident, dear. And I said, that's not what I mean. Why am I here? She said,
Oh.
you're in the emergency room. I said, that's not what I mean. Why am I here?
Because
So
you wanted
this,
to be somewhere else. Do you remember what they said your reason that you were here
it
for
has,
this life?
it has been every day since then. I, I have tried to remember that. And occasionally I will get a glimpse of some of the things that they said about why I chose to be here. And of course, realizing that I was the one who changed my mind and decided to come back. Why did I decide to come back and continue it instead of staying there? And a lot of it, I think, is because these are really exciting times, and I wanted to be here. It's sort of
Well,
like I didn't want to miss the party.
Ellen, not only that, but if I was one of those beings, now we've only just met, right? But if I
Right.
was one of those beings, I would show you how one conversation with you can change somebody's life and impact somebody's life for good. And my sneaky sense is in that split second, you got to see the impact that you would be on other lives. Because even though we just met, your story has brought me so much hope and joy and possibility and wonder. And like you've been a huge gift to me. And yes, there's going to be thousands of people listening, and my hope is that it makes a difference to them too. But for what you just did for me, um, if you got a little taste of that while you were in the hereafter, if you got a little taste of what you just did for me, you would say, yeah, I have to do that more with more people. And then you chose to come back because you just gave a huge gift to me and hopefully all of us, um, by saying everything you did say.
Oh, well, thank you. And you
Yeah.
did just give me a total chill.
Yeah. So I think it's more than just being wanting to be part of it all. It
Right. Well,
really is. And just knowing you, looking at um your website and knowing what you're up to, lionmagic.com, lion like the roar of a lion. Um, just seeing that you're a giver and you're making a difference, and that's the niche you came in here to fill and to share, that this unconditional love is possible and the laughter is possible and the happiness is possible. And I mean, I get really hard on myself, and I'm also silently really rough on other people, like why are they the way they are? But just how you
hmm
said that every person plays a different note and love them anyways. It's like, oh, I mean, it just like you just created a symphony in my mind of the people in my life. That's a gift, my dear.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, and you just gave me such a gift that I'd never quite looked at it that way, but it probably is that they showed me a vision of that, and I went, oh, okay, yeah, no brainer. I'm going
Going
back,
back, going back.
But
You just forgot.
but of course, since we get down on ourselves, and I think, oh, come on, I have a conversation with somebody, how much difference does that make? Who am I? I think, we all get stuck in that
Well, don't
somehow we
we?
can't make a
Oh
difference
my
in other
gosh.
people's
It's
lives.
insane. We're
I
just
know.
silly, and we all do that. We all do that.
We
And
do.
and we're such a gift for other people, yet we look in the mirror and we're nobodies or there's something wrong with us. Anyway, so our time goes by really quickly, so
I
we
know.
can't stay on for hours and hours. But what happened next, from being in the emergency room? I'm dying to know when you found out, or if you found out that the guy turned out the lights in the car.
Oh, well, I was handed a traffic ticket in the emergency room
Oh, that's insane.
for driving without my headlights on. And I'm like, wait a minute, and then I saw it in my head. It's like,
Uh-huh.
oh my God, that guy came and turned off my lights. And I thought, how can I go to court and prove that,
Yeah. But
that
that's
I had him on?
interesting. Sure.
I was lucky. I was lucky in so many ways.
Yes.
And possibly I made this arrangement, with the beings that I was talking to. I had a severe concussion because I hit my head on the steering wheel and then ricocheted into the windshield. I smashed my knees into the dashboard. But other than about 6 weeks of recovery, I didn't have any, permanent physical damage, which
Good.
was really, really wonderful. I had to get an attorney, and I went to court, and fortunately the guy that caused the accident didn't show up. So
Hmm.
when the police officer said, well, the other guy said that her lights weren't on, my attorney was able to say, that's hearsay, and it got struck.
Right.
So, but, I had called in I was like, okay, you guys, don't make me pay a ticket for this. This is ridiculous. And, they came through. I think that's why the other guy didn't show up. So that turned out fine. And well, then I started the long road of incorporating this experience, into my life, because it really is. Everybody hears about the wonderful parts of the NDE, but not too many people talk about uh, the changes that take place in you, because your priorities change, your belief system changes, your toleration of things changes, and your personality changes.
Well, that's
And
my question is how do you live life, or how is your life different knowing that we don't die?
well, um,
And you just said
I
them,
would
but
look.
just speak a little bit more about it, or whatever you wanted
I'm
to say.
okay. I've become more fearless in a lot of ways that I never thought I would be. I used to be terrified of public speaking, and now I just take over the room and
I
start
I
talking.
can see that. You're taking over the airwaves. It's good. No, it's all good.
and and
You're very
because and
confident.
it took me a long time, though. I didn't start doing this until, I think, my first YouTube video went up in August of 2007, and I almost had a heart attack. Or I definitely a panic attack, and I called the guy and I said, you have to take it down,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because I felt so exposed and so vulnerable. But I decided, okay, and this is the lion thing. It's like you can't have courage unless you're shaking in your boots. So, it is, for me, it really has been, I didn't just suddenly get courage because I had an NDE. I had to practice it,
Yes.
and one baby step at a time, and each time I felt like I was really like going out there on a limb, and from 2007 to now I go in and take over a room. So
Yeah.
it's I felt like I had something that I needed to say and I wanted to say and that people wanted to hear, and it was a slow process of getting the personality Ellyn and the ego Ellyn to be okay with that. So that was huge. It was difficult, and kind of took a long time, but
That's
um,
great.
overcoming that fear and processing all of the stuff about it. But because I had kind of grown up thinking, who wants to hear anything I have to say, and I had
Yeah.
to get over that.
Sure. Sure.
And it came to, I have to be my authentic self, and some people won't like that. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to be that anyway. And, we live in a culture that wants everybody to be cut out of the same cookie cutter and wants everybody to act the same way. And, we're worried about whether we're going to lose our job if we speak up. And we're worried about whether our relationships are going to end if we speak up, or if we decide we want to do something different. So
Mm-hmm.
it really takes a lot of courage to do that. And I mean, I know that I got knowledge and help from having the near-death experience, because it just kind of pushed me forward. But the worst thing was that I spent about 10 years afterwards just my life just sort of went just tipped over, and I went into depression for a long time, and didn't want to be here.
Sure.
And so it's been a step by step process, but what I found is that the more authentic you are out in the world, the easier it is. It's really astonishing. We spend so much of our life trying to hide these parts of ourselves that we think are different. And what I'm finding is that the more you show those parts, the more you share those parts of yourself with other people, the more embraced you are by people. Because, when we show our vulnerabilities, when we show our differences, then it gives other people courage to share theirs.
You know,
And it's
I'm
amazing.
I'm reminded of a guy that spoke on stage, and everybody wants to look good and everything, but his zipper was down. And so as much and somebody had handed him a note and said, your fly is down, and and right in front of everybody, he just turned and zipped it up. Well, he had a good laugh at himself. And
Hmm.
the truth is, after the seminar, even though there was plenty of other speakers, whose message did they remember? His, because he's just being real.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, we all end up with their zippers down once in a while,
But
because
that's
we're all human.
And it really does. I absolutely loved the picture you painted of a symphony with all the different notes. Because I mean, I never took the piano, but I can just imagine a common, say, C note, and you just keep playing it over and over and over and over and over. It gets really boring, and the more
I
people with that
know.
note, boring, and then people are trying to fit in and be that C note by having the, the right body size, the right hair color, speaking the right way, but boring. And then show me somebody that's I don't even know F flat. I don't know even the
Hmm.
terminology, but give me somebody different and new and who's just real and bold. And yeah, that's really good advice for just being who we are and being confident in that. And the truth is, I don't think we're ever going to like ourselves. So get over that.
Right.
Other
Well, as
people
long as
do. I've
as
said
long as we compare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've said this before, and I have to even tell it to myself. There's one Sandra Champlain who looks in the mirror and I'm so hard on myself physically. I've not done enough getting message of my book out, like all these things. And then there's this world around me that thinks, there's people that think I'm pretty. There's people that think I'm loving and powerful and courageous and all this. And so you get a lot of people around you that have the same story about you. You just can't help but know to your core, I'm not. I'm one person that has one story. There's a dozen people around me that have this different story. Well, guess what? They're right and I'm wrong. And start living the life of who other people tell you you are because that's really who you are. And I don't think we're ever going to like ourselves or be pretty enough or thin enough or powerful enough or successful enough. So just get over it and show your vulnerable side and let us love you. How's that?
Right. And well, and who is it that's telling you that you should be different? It's the advertisers tell us that we should be thinner or
Yeah,
whatever,
right.
and it's like they're
Uh,
just trying to sell a product.
It
It's
gets
like,
locked
really? You
in.
know.
Yeah. Ellen, we're getting down to the final minutes. And what I would like to do, if it's all right with you, is just have you tell people what it is you do now that have had all this experience. What is an intuitive coach, teacher? I mean, what are you up to? I know you're writing another book, right?
I'm writing my book about creating heaven on earth,
I love that.
and it's
I'm all in
and
on
it is
that.
one soul at a time. It's not going to happen because of legislation. It's going to happen as each person goes more to love
Right.
um, around the world, and we're all here to do that. We chose to participate in that process,
Okay. Good.
so that's very exciting to me.
Hmm.
And I'm an intuitive coach. I still have this connection to these beings who are what I call benevolent guardians of humanity, and they just love us so much, and they're really available to anybody who wants to ask them for help, and I do, and I still have this connection. So when I'm working with a client, sometimes I will get downloads of information from them, and something will come out of my mouth and I'll go, wow, that was good. I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah.
and and it always seems to be just the right thing, for the person to hear. I help people see other perspectives on what's happening in their lives. I mean, one of the things is, a lot of us had parents who might have been a little harsh or something, or we have
Yes.
people in our lives who are very difficult. And I came up with this analogy that some people come into our lives to be the sand in our oyster to help us become the beautiful pearl we're supposed to be.
I love that. I'm going to quote you
So,
everywhere on that one.
one of those beings gave me that one, but it's true. And it's like, even the people who are difficult, if we can look at a situation that's really challenging and say, okay, what can I learn from this? And how can I make it better? And why would I have this in my life? It's not punishment. It's just, we bring these in so that we can hone ourselves and bring ourselves more to love. So I do intuitive coaching. I have a fantasy novel that has a lot of information about how life works that I learned during my NDE, but it's still a novel. It's an adventure story.
We like that.
And perfect for Christmas.
That's The Search for the Crystal Key.
The Search for the Crystal Key.
Okay.
And at the moment, in addition to those things, I'm also putting out a free monthly newsletter, which is basically my musing on whatever issue I happen to focus on at the time. I've done things about, how can we have peace in the world if we don't have peace in our heart and our own lives? Why can't we just get those people to change? It's like, we all want everybody else to change, but guess what? We have to change.
Sure.
It's all an inside job, and I'm working on my next newsletter, and I think it's going to be about the law of attraction and creating our own reality. So
I like it.
I'm not quite sure how that's going to evolve yet, because it always evolves as I'm writing it. So
I look forward to it. I'm going to sign up. Ellyn,
that keeps me pretty busy.
You really have not only kept a smile on my face for an hour,
Good.
but you were just filled with being vulnerable, regular, nice, insightful, funny, loving. I can just hear in your voice that you're just a loving person, and you'd be just fun to hang out with.
Well, thank
That's
you.
what I'm feeling. And um, I do these interviews again. Yes, I want to make a difference for every listener, but I'm also looking for the gold for my life. And I have hard times. I'm not perfect, and you just gave me so much reassurance that it's okay to play my own note, be a little different,
Yeah,
accept the others that are too. I do have hard days, and just
we all
hearing,
do.
yeah, about the sand in our oyster, and I thought, that's all. You know, I love that. So I want to thank you really from the bottom of my
Well,
heart. And I hope we can connect again and be friends, and I'll share you wherever I can. And for our listener, have a picture of Ellyn Dye on my website, we-don't-die-radio.com, and you can go there and you can listen to this episode again if you like. And I'll also put the link to Ellyn's website, lionmagic.com, so you can sign up for her newsletter, find out more about her and her books. Anything else you want to say, Ellyn? And if not, I'll just close
um,
the show.
well, not really. I do, I like to share information about my NDE and what I learned from that.
Hmm.
So that's kind of my mission, and I have a lot of information about that on my website. It's free.
Yep.
So
Free is
so
good.
come on by.
Yeah,
That's
free
right.
free is
It's
good.
all about sharing the love.
Well,
So
we do. We loved having you here today, and really, what a gift. And also to our listener, you could have been doing probably 150 other things than spending this hour with Ellyn and I today. So I really appreciate you for taking the time to listen, and I hope it's been a value to you as it has been to me. I want to encourage you that the we don't die radio.com is a place where all the past episodes are there. And like Ellyn just said, everything's free. And if you want to contact a guest after the episode, fine. If you don't, fine. And you just want to be inspired. Um, and I believe that life is an education for our soul, and that each and every one of us, that our life here really is important. And so I just invite each one of us today to just look outside in our life and think of whether it's the people or the opportunities that are really turning us into the pearls, to recognize that we're each playing a little different note in the orchestra, but each one of us adds to the beauty of it all. And think of the sound of heaven being the sound of laughter, and let's find a little humor in our day today. Can we all do that? I know I'm in a great mood right now, and anything that we can do to pay it forward, create some happiness, create some humor, and just lead the rest of the day with a big smile on our face. That'd be a nice intention. So I want to thank again our guest, Ellyn Dye, for being here with us. Again, her website is lionmagic.com. And one quick favor, if these episodes make a difference for you, on iTunes, if you search We Don't Die, and you have to be logged into your account. If you could just take a moment to either post a review or click on how many stars. Hopefully it's 5 stars you want to give. But believe it or not, people do look at the episodes, and if a lot of people like them, it might give them the courage to listen, and hopefully it can bring a smile to someone's face. Or, there's a lot of people grieving, and hearing that life after death is real is very profound, as we heard earlier, in helping us with the grieving process. So that's all I have to say. I'm Sandra Champlain. I've been your host on We Don't Die Radio. And yeah,